everybody! What the Flick is What the Fright this month, and we're talking about some of the best horror movies of the 21st century so far. My name is William Bibbiani. With me here is Joe Lynch, the director of Knights of Badassdom, Everly, and Mayhem, coming out November 10th. We're going to talk about one of the best horror comedies ever made today. We're going to talk about Shaun of the Dead. Joe, why don't you take us into a clip?
Really?
Do it.
This one?
This one. Take it into a clip.
All right, here's a clip.
Now, some of these are limited.
What was that?
I think it was Blue Monday.
Man, there was an original press out.
For fuck's sake. Purple Rain. No. Sign of the Times. Definitely not.
The Batman soundtrack.
Throw it. Okay. Oh, Dire Straits. Throw it. Oh, Stone Roses. No. Second Coming. I like it. Oh, Sade. That's Liz's.
Yeah, but she did dump you.
Wow, what a clip!
What a clip!
Ooh, but the thing is, every moment of that movie is a clip.
Yeah.
If you think about it, I was watching the movie again last night, and I saw the first screening in LA where Tarantino was like standing kind of like next to us where we were sitting and just laughing his ass off. And if you can make Tarantino laugh as the way he did for a movie that, for all intents and purposes, let's just kind of like set the gauntlet right now. Shaun of the Dead is a horror movie. It just so happens to be hilarious, and it just so happens to have great, endearing characters that you care about who are already funny, and it just so happens that there are zombies that kind of show up, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact that watching Tarantino laugh the way he did, I was like, man, this movie's working,
Yeah.
you know? And to watch it again, God, like over 15 years later, my wife and I, she's a huge Edgar Wright fan and a huge Shaun of the Dead fan, we're watching it again, I'm going, I forgot how terrifying this movie is.
Yeah.
And how the first, the thing that, the secret genius of Shaun of the Dead for me is that you don't need the zombies for it to be a horror movie. The true horror of that movie is growing up, is becoming 30, is having to be an adult.
And the movie just gives a framework in which Shaun has to do everything on his growing up to-do list in one day.
Yeah, in one day.
What if you had to do everything you had to do to grow up in one day? That's Shaun of the Dead.
And
zombies are just the catalyst.
And again, exactly, the zombies end up just being that thing that just kind of gives him that little kick in the ass that he needs to be able to go from the guy that can kind of barely sort of climb up the window shaft to be able to get into the apartment to the guy who's going to get up there and save the day and save his girl and save her friends and become the hero.
I consider this to be one of the great horror screenplays.
Oh, easily.
I would teach this in a class alongside stuff like, Get Out or The Exorcist. Like every scene in this movie is intensely well written, give and take between the characters. Yeah. It sets up material that will be important later thematically.
Where you don't even know it. You don't even know. There are moments that you're going like, dogs don't look up.
That's important later.
And it's just such a throwaway line in the beginning.
The jukebox, it doesn't work. That's important later. It all plays out, and you can tell that this is a project that Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg, that they've been like toying with for a long time. And you can see it if you watch their show Spaced.
Yep.
There's the Resident Evil episode, and you can see them sort of working out like the bugs in their
you can tell like they got an itch to do something zombie-like from that episode and went like, we can go further with this. We can really pay homage to all of the, the tropes that we love, the filmmakers we love, the fact that there's a restaurant called Full Cheese at one point, which is so great. The thing that I love about that movie from a screenplay level is, for the longest time, I always thought that two of the best screenwriters in Hollywood for a very long time were Zemeckis and Gale. Because when you watched any of their scripts being produced, or you watched like some of the films that they had made, obviously between 1941 and Used Cars and Back to the Future and stuff, they had a wonderfully uncanny knack of making things set up and pay off where you don't even know that they're set up and payoffs.
The first, everything up until Marty McFly goes back in time.
It's all
Back
there.
to the Future. Every single line of dialogue, everything in the background.
It's crucial.
Everything pays off.
Yep.
Everything is a gag. Everything is important later. Everything sells it. It is a brilliant screenplay.
And that's essentially, without you even knowing it, that's exactly what Shaun of the Dead does, both on a screenplay level, but also on a visual level. Like what Edgar's doing with the camera, even as simple as having Shaun walk from his flat to the store and back again.
Yeah,
in that
same
steady
shot,
cam shot, same
same
exact
shot,
shot, and it's
totally different each time.
I remember again, like watching it in the theater and watching the audience go, "I get it," because when you have those moments, you feel invested in the filmmaking. You feel invested in the story. It's like you're being rewarded every time that you kind of pick up on something that is a bit of like a setup and a payoff. You go like, oh yeah, like you feel like you're part of the gang, you're part of the conversation.
And some movies are so inelegant about that. It's just like, but they might as well just say, oh, here, let me give you my watch. This will be important later.
Yeah, wink, wink,
like,
wink.
Yeah, like they managed to hide it underneath character development and jokes. One of the things I really admire about this movie, and I think this is a movie I would show to anybody who doesn't understand the difference between satire and parody. Because parody is just looking at something going, ha ha. Satire, true satire, works on the level of the thing it's satirizing. It's not saying we're better than you. It's not mocking the zombie genre. It's we love the zombie genre. We want to do our own zombie movie, but we're also going to sort of poke at it a little bit and talk about how some of these tropes that we've come up with are, at heart, somewhat silly, but who gives a crap because they work.
And because of these characters that you truly care about, like I remember when the movie first came out, I remember the few critics that were out there for the movie were like, oh, and then it just gets, once they get to the Winchester, it just gets too dark for me, and like but the thing is, that is the whole point, is that every time when mom dies, when the friends start to go, when Ed gets bit, in a parody, you wouldn't give two shits.
Nope.
Like you would just be like, oh, it was either I saw that coming or what a twist. But it is truly harrowing. Like even when Ed is like starting to get pulled into the closet, and we're all going, we are Shaun going like, Ed, no. If you didn't have that first, half an hour of basically setting things up and endearing to these characters, you wouldn't give a crap. And when things get dark, and they need to get dark, because you need to see those consequences. And I mean, that's the genius of this film, is that it really does belong in the horror section, not the comedy section, because if you stripped away all the jokes, it would still be an incredibly effective horror thriller.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you.
We can just do this whole thing.
It's so good.
Wait, that scene.
What are we? Why? Like even the dumbest jokes, it feels like it earns them.
Yeah.
Like when Ed screams, "We're coming to get you, Barbara." That's a stupid joke. In a vacuum, in just whatever, that's a stupid joke. But because it comes in such an intense moment, it works.
Yeah, and
better than it ever should.
But the thing is, you don't even realize, like up until that point, is that
her name was Barbara.
and that was all set up for just that one moment, because that they were probably just like, it could be Maude, it could be Ethel, like what about Barbara? Ooh, and then by the time you're in that movie, like watching it again last night, I truly feel like Shaun of the Dead is the visual movie equivalent of having that great conversation while being in line at a Fangoria convention. When you meet that other guy that's like, dude, did you ever see The Beyond? You know what I mean? Like when you start meeting buddies and then you start going like, oh man, and when they use that like gunshot sound effect in all those Italian horror movies, or like when you go, remember the Hare Krishna zombie from Dawn of the Dead? Like when you start realizing like that there are other people who speak our language, that movie speaks on that language and uses all of those kind of like geeky tropes, but it's peppered in. It's not like shoving it down your throat like a scary movie.
I think it's interesting because you also think about the time that Shaun of the Dead came out. If Shaun of the Dead came out now, it would still be a great movie.
Yeah.
But it might also feel like a drop in a bucket. At the time it came out in like the mid-2000s, the zombie genre was still just experiencing a resurgence.
we were just in the kind of throes of like, and this and the other movie that we're going to talk about, the zombie genre was not it was kind of dormant in a way. We were still kind of in the J-horror craze.
Everyone knew about zombie movies. Everyone had a sort of a general awareness of them, but there hadn't been like a hit zombie movie in like a really long time.
That's what made it fresh.
Yeah.
You go like, wait a second, I remember zombie movies, and the fact that this movie took it seriously enough, the fact that it truly paid homage to George Romero, and it truly paid homage to what Fulci and the kind of zombie giallo movies were doing back in the day. All of those movies were, kind of, what's the word? Kind of Bible to them. It was canon to them. They truly loved it and wanted to make it so loving an homage, so much so that Romero put them in Land of the Dead.
Right. Do you remember in House of the Dead when like the one movie nerd referred to Night, Dawn, and Day as the Holy Trilogy?
I tried to forget that movie.
We all tried to forget that, but the sequel wasn't half bad though.
You're right. Wait, was that the one with Zach Ward?
Yeah, I think he was.
Yes,
in that
yes,
one.
it was.
Yeah, it wasn't. That had moments.
We're geeking out.
We're
here.
geeking-
We're
getting
geeking
distracted.
out in line at the Fangoria.
That's right.
Now.
Although we haven't had the argument yet, where you're just like, "Oh, have you seen The Beyond? It's no House by the Cemetery. What died?"
But it's no Gates of Hell. Or like, oh, but the thing that works with this movie is it's really down to the tone and the characters, like the sound design in the movie, the score. Everything is making it feel like it is truly a horror movie, and the fact that Simon and Nick and all those actors are just being themselves almost, and it makes that reflection be a reflection of us.
I think the real genius about Edgar Wright's work in general, the thing that I think he does better than any other filmmaker, is he will take a genre that we're familiar with, that has been sort of done and redone over and over and over again, and he will remind you of the heart and the character that made it popular in the first place, because it is so easy when something is successful to copy the superficial aspects.
Yeah.
We saw it with Paranormal Activity. Everyone copied the found footage, gags, the jokes, the scares, and they kind of forgot that at the heart, that's a story about domestic strife.
Yeah.
And he took the zombie genre, reminded you that zombie movies are movies about people, not zombies. He did the same thing with Hot Fuzz and reminded you that buddy cop movies started off with the idea of two great characters interacting and not just wacky opposites who had to fight crime.
And World's End ends up being that feeling of like what happens after you grow up and going back home and feeling like I don't have a purpose anymore. I don't have a place in this world anymore. It just so happens that aliens are involved.
It's like a badass garden state.
Yeah.
Like any returning home story. That's
The thing that I love about Edgar's movies is you're right. There is something always bubbling under the surface. That there is something that is thematically more involved than what's whatever visual craziness is going on screen, and kind of like the A level. And you look at Tarantino and you look at some of the, all of his movies and all of his work, and I still watch Reservoir Dogs, his first film, and I go, I still think that is like his masterpiece. As much as Pulp Fiction is considered like his masterpiece, Reservoir Dogs is a movie made by a guy with desperation who might never make a movie again. And Shaun of the Dead feels like a movie made by a guy who's saying to himself, I'm getting this one shot. I'm going to put everything in my being into this movie, and if I walk away from this movie and end up being like a cab driver from now on, I know that I've put 200% into this movie, and hopefully George Romero sees it someday. And boy, oh boy, did George Romero see it someday. And that's why Shaun of the Dead is not just a great zombie movie, it's not just a great character piece, it's not just a great comedy, it is the best Edgar Wright movie, hands down.
I think totally agree. I think it's one of the best movies, period, of the 21st century. So when it comes time for what the flick rating, I very rarely ever give a 10. I'm giving a 9.9.
I'm giving
to
it a 10.
Shaun of the Dead. You're giving it a 10.
I'm dropping it. I'm dropping the gauntlet
Totally
right now.
fine.
It gets a 10 for me. It again, every time I watch it, this is Halloween, so of course we're watching movies again, over and over. There's the annual movies. I watched Hocus Pocus a couple nights ago. A solid 7.3. Sorry,
it's fun, but let's be honest.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But when you watch Shaun of the Dead, you can't not appreciate the characters. You cannot appreciate the story. You cannot appreciate the visuals. All of these things kind of converging together. It is to me, it is a perfect movie. I can't find one thing wrong with it at all.
If you think of the one thing wrong with it, don't tell us.
No, keep it to yourself.
We'll be back tomorrow with another of the great contemporary zombie movies with Joe Lynch, director of Mayhem, in theaters and on VOD November 10th.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?